Sarvesham Punah Swagatam. A very, very warm welcome to all of you on this second day of our workshop, and third and fourth lectures are to be delivered today. So the third lecture is on theory and practice of Vāda, Vivāda and samvāda in the Mahābhārata. And yes, it is again saying admit, very difficult situation. Anyway, because I had enabled the waiting room, and then they have sent a message that waiting room is enabled, so it should admit automatically.
Yes, sir.
It is not admitting. Again, it is asking me to admit. Okay, I am not seeing myself, but if you are seeing me, it's all right.
Yes, sir. आप दिख रहे हैं.
अच्छा, हम ही अपने आप को नहीं देख पा रहे हैं. So theory and practice of Vāda, which includes samvāda also in the Mahābhārata. So Mahābhārata is the greatest text about Vāda, which includes samvāda. So it's a text about Vāda, in Vāda. It's a Siksha Granth or manual for Vāda, and it's a text of samvāda also. So yesterday in my first lecture, I had enumerated the 6 categories of texts related to Vāda. There are Siddhanta Granthas or Vādaśāstra Granthas which deal with the theory of Vāda, Siddhantas of Vāda. Then there are Vāda Granthas or texts describing a particular theory, like Shakti Vāda, etc. And Arambha Vāda by Pandit Badrinath Shukla ji, a great Nayayika of our times. So they deal with a particular theory with all its Puru Pakshas and the Uttar Paksha. Then Vivarana Granthas are there, which describes the Vadas that actually happened, either in history or in meta history, इतिहास जिसको हमारे यहाँ कहते हैं. So that इतिहास is not actual, not exactly covers this. It doesn't fully imply the sense of history in the modern sense of the term. इतिहास में हुए हैं या हिस्ट्री में हुए हैं ऐसे वादों को जो निरूपित करते हैं, ऐसे ग्रंथ हो सकते हैं. विवरण ग्रंथ है, शिक्षा ग्रंथ, मैनुअल्स फॉर ट्रेनिंग इन वाद. साहित्य, लिटरेरी टेक्स्ट हो सकते हैं, उनमें वाद है, जैसा कल हमने बात की, दैट ऑल द ग्रेट क्लासिक्स they are structured in Vāda. Some kind of Vāda is going on. Vāda on various levels. There are layers of Vāda in each great text of either it is whether it's a literary text or a Shastra text. Then there are samvāda granthas, the text which reflect samvāda. Mahābhārata confirms the characteristics of all the 6. It's a Siddhanta Grantha, it's a Vāda Grantha, it's a Vivaran Grantha and a Siksha Grantha. It's a great classic, Mahan Kavya hai. So it's a Samvāda Grantha because Samvādas are there. The whole text of Mahābhārata is full of samvāda. The whole Mahābhārata in itself is a samvāda, you see. Samvāda between Vaishampayana and Janmejaya, samvāda between Sut and 88,000 of sages, samvāda between Vyasa and others. So the whole Mahābhārata runs through samvādas. There are samvādas within samvādas. So it's a complex structure of samvāda, you can say. So you see again, there are messages for admitting. So there are now 38 participants. I will happily, it is showing the message on the screen so that I can admit. So Mahabharata creates a dialogue with the whole traditions, with all the traditions of knowledge systems, with our history. And several other systems, it creates dialogue with them. विविध परंपराओं के साथ, संपूर्ण इतिहास के साथ, शास्त्र परंपराओं के साथ महाभारत संवाद करता है. And these are the lines which Mahabharata itself describes the samvāda strategy of the text itself. So the whole cosmology, how the creation has proceeded, and all the beings of the world, Veda, Yoga, Dharma, Artha, Kam, Moksha, all the Shastras related to it, and Lok Yatra Vidhan, the लोगों का रहन सहन, दिनचर्या. So whatever the seer has seen in this Bharat Desh, he makes a dialogue with it, and he creates this meta text after visualizing all these things. And the word samvāda, as we have seen yesterday also, it is used in the Mahabharata in the sense of highly profound discussion between two intellectuals that was carried out in past and lives and lives in the collective memory of a race. This is a specific concept of samvāda in Mahabharata. Samvāda is defined in Nyaya Sutra in the 4th Adhikarana. If it is called Adhikarana, so far I know, they deal with the concept of samvāda. But in Mahabharata, it has a very broad concept of samvāda. So it is of course a highly profound discussion between two intellectuals, but that was carried out in past, and it lives in the collective memory of a race, so that it becomes an itihasa. So samvāda and itihasa are treated at par. So the whole of the Mahabharata is a samvāda, and it is itihasa also. Itihasa not in the sense of the term history as we know today, but it is itihasa. Meta history you can say, or history in our concept. तो हमारी जो इतिहास की दृष्टि है उसके अनुसार जो इतिहास बोध सबसे अधिक चरितार्थ होता है दो ग्रंथों में, वो रामायण और महाभारत है, और दोनों संवाद ग्रंथ भी कहे गए, और संवाद और इतिहास पर्याय हो जाते हैं. तो संवाद वह है जो जातीय स्मृतियों में निरंतर गुथा चला आ रहा है, जैसे रामायण और महाभारत है. So this samvāda and itihas, both these words also actually occur repeatedly in the Mahabharata. That this is the samvāda between Narada and these sages. This is the samvāda between Sanat Kumar and Narada. This is the samvāda between Yudhishthira and Vidura, etc., etc. And the word itihasa also. So whatever old samvādas that they are recorded in the, they continue in the memory of a race, they are called samvādas, and they also become itihasa. So atrapi udaharantimam itihasam puratanam, this is a pet line in Mahabharata. Repeatedly it recurs, atrapi udaharantimam itihasam puratanam, and then they will cite the itihasa. That this is the itihasa which lives in the memory of the people. So Mahabharata is a repository of great vādas and great samvādas. The question, so we can cite some instances. Very profound samvadas are there, like the Yaksha Yudhishthira samvāda, and it is a unique samvāda between Yaksha and Yudhishthira, and the whole wisdom of Yudhishthira. You see what a great thinker he is, and what an insight he has. Ahanyahani bhutani gacchanti yama mandiram शेषा स्थावरम इच्छन्ति किमाश्चर्य मतः परम का वार्ता किमाश्चर्यम कह पंथा कश्च मोदते. So what is the news around the world? What is the wonder? Such questions Yaksha is asking. And ahanyahani bhutani gachanti yama mandiram shesha sthavar ichanti kimascharya matah param. Every day people are dying one after another, but others are still sticking to their lives. So what wonder can be more than that? So bhutani kalah pachatiti varta. The news about this world, the varta of this world is that every day अस्मिन् महामोहमये कटाहे सूर्याग्निना रात्रि दिवेन्दनेन भूतानि कालः पचतीति वार्ता. In this Mahakata, big pain, the Kala is cooking all the beings of the world. This is the news about this world actually. So all these sayings, you see, most remarkable sayings of the wisdom, of Indian wisdom, they occur in such samvadas like Yaksh Yudhishthir samvāda. And in the debates also, like the debate I referred yesterday between Ashtavakra and Bandin. And then there are Gitas in Mahabharata. There is not only one Gita in the Mahabharata. There are, I think, 25 Gitas in the Mahabharata. Anu Gita and Ashtavakra Gita and Vidur Gita, etc., etc. So somebody can prepare a list. There is one Rajendra Sharma at Jaipur. He has published a collection of Gitas in 3 volumes. So I think more than 50 Gitas he has published in those 3 volumes. So all the Gitas, you see, they are structured in samvāda. Samvād granth hai sari Gita hai. Like Krishnarjuna Yudhishthir samvāda or samvādas of Vidura and Vidur Gita. So then it should be interfaith. So Professor Kala Acharya would be speaking. I don't know whether she could join. She did not receive the link, and I just sent to her the link 10 minutes before. Although the link were shared with all experts and participants. Anyway, so the interfaith and interreligious dialogues, which we will be again discussing tomorrow. So Mahabharata is a great text in interfaith and interreligious dialogues. You can continue to talk about these interfaith, interreligious dialogues in the Mahabharata for days and days together. So I will cite only one example, which appeared to me very peculiar. You see, I couldn't imagine that this kind of dialogue Mahabharata has made, and it appears very convincing, although it is somewhat very strange. That Vasudeva Sharan Agrawal, he says that this Narayaniya Parvan of the Moksha Dharma Parva in Mahabharata gives an account of Ekantin Bhagavatas following the cult of Narayana and of Iranian religion based on the philosophy of Ahur Mazda. तो जो पारसियों का धर्म है उसके साथ में संवाद जो भागवत धर्म का है उसका कैसे बनता है. So there are parallels between the Bhagavata philosophy and this philosophy of Ahur Mazda. This is what this Narayaniya Parvan is about. This is what Vasudeva Sharan Agrawala says, and he gives convincing reasoning for that on the basis of his knowledge of history. He was a great historian, a great Indologist, a revered figure, at least for me. So the text compares several terms and institutions of Bhagavad Dharma with their counterparts in Iranian religion and vice versa. This is a great text of hermeneutics, you see, which Darashikoh was attempting in 17th century. Mahabharata has done it millennia before that. So Vasudeva Sharan Agrawala says that it is the cream of synthesis between two great religious movements of India and Iran, brought out most likely during the reign of Kushana emperors Kanishka and Huvishka. This Kanishka and Huvishka, both of them are referred in Raj Tarangani also. They ruled over Kashmir. They are very well known historical figures. So he said that this synthesis was happening during the reign of these periods because they are coming from that land, Bactrian, Gandhar Desh, etc. And when the Greek and Iranian deities were represented on the coins, and their worship permeated the whole atmosphere. Okay, Professor Kala Acharya, I was remembering of you because you were to talk about interfaith and interreligious dialogues. So I was telling that Mahābhārata is a great text on interfaith and interreligious dialogues, and in the Mokshadharam Parvan, Narayani Parvan of Mokshadharam Parva, there is a whole section of correspondences between Bhagavad Dharma and Iranian Zoroastrianism. And there are reasons to believe Vasudeva Sharan Agrawala when he claims that. So Ahur Majda is named here as Hari Medhas. So now we can search for Hari Medhas in Mahābhārata and Puranas. So V.S. Agrawal says that Hari Medhas is actually Ahur Majda. Hari Medhas is repeatedly referred to in the Mahābhārata and also in some Puranas. It is mentioned in this Parvan that Narada went to Badrinatha, where he saw two rishis, Nar and Narayana. He inquired with them about the nature of supreme reality and was advised to visit Shvetadvipa, which lies at the coast of Kshiroda Sea, which is Kshir Sagar or Caspian Sea. Narada went to Shvetadvipa and had a vision of God Hari Medhas there. He met a special class of priests also who were called Dasturs there. So Agrawala finds a complete stotra in the chapter 3 to 5 of this Parvan in the Mahābhārata, characterized by the tenets of Zoroastrianism as a eulogy to God Hari Medhas or Ahur Majda. He then goes to conclude, I quote him, the Narayaniya Parva is thus an unparalleled text in Sanskrit literature which has much deeper meaning and deserves to be studied in the light of Indo-Iranian religious synthesis as emerged during Sasano-Gupta times, unquote. So coming to the next, Mahābhārata is a text which tells very interesting stories. What we discussed as Drishtanta in the lecture yesterday. So it is full of Drishtantas, illustrative stories, Akhyanas as Drishtantas. So in the support of a thesis, they would cite a Drishtanta, the seers would cite a Drishtanta. And these very beautiful stories, giving some message and making some kind of dialogue, telling the people about real dharma, like this narrative of a mongoose entering the arena of the story of Kaushika, sorry, when Mahabharata war is over, a mongoose or Nakula enters the arena of that Ashwamedha sacrifice being performed by Yudhishthira, and unable to make half of his body golden by tossing around and besmearing himself with the remains of the sacrifice, he declares that the merit earned by the performance of the sacrifice cannot simply equal the merit earned by the poor Brahmin who had during the famine given to a hungry host the last morsel of the food meant to save him and his family from starvation. So it's a very appealing story, a universal story, you see, that all the karmakandas, the rituals cannot equal the sacrifice which a poor man, maybe a majdoor, a kisan. So what जो त्याग मजदूर किसान करता है अपने जीवन की आहुति दे करके, वो 1000 अश्वमेध करके भी उसकी बराबरी नहीं कर सकते हैं. This is what Mahabharata is telling. Even when it is describing the great Ashwamedhas of Yudhishthira and all these things. So the kings should understand this. They are going for the rituals, all these rituals, building of temples. They should more care for the farmers and the labor. The labor is dying. Lakhs and lakhs of laborers out of employment, and they are dying. So what sort of dharma you are doing if this happens when you are ruling? This is the message of Mahabharata to all the kings, all the rulers of all the times, by this illustrative story of this Nakula entering the arena of Mahabharata. But the kings, the rulers, they are fools. They won't understand the message of Mahabharata, and they would continue to perform rituals. They would care for the rituals. They would continue to befool the people. Right from Mahabharata time till now, this is happening. So in the same way, there is a story of Kaushik, the Dharmavyadha, and the household lady also, as an example of the highest standard of morality that can be conceived by a civilized society. The rituals fall short of the broad concept of dharma. The Kaushika performed the penance, and some bird उसने बीट कर दिया उनके महाराज, मुनि महाराज के माथे पर. So the bird, you see, put her shit on his head, and he saw it with the burning eyes, and that bird was burned. So that sage became very proud that I have attained such siddhi, and he went to some lady for begging alms, bhiksha, and that lady didn't appear. He called twice or thrice because she was doing her household duties, she was serving her husband. So when ultimately she appeared with the bhiksha, and Kaushika glared on her, उन्होंने उसको उसी तरह से जलती हुई दृष्टि से घूरा कि मैं तुझे जला दूंगा. So that lady said that I am not that bird which will burn with these eyes of yours by your sight. मैं वो चिड़िया नहीं हूं जिसको कि आप अपनी आंखों की तेज से जला देंगे. आपकी सिद्धि उस चिड़िया को जलाने तक ही है. So then that Kaushika realized that what a fool he was. So then she supplicated before her and told her, you please teach me real dharma. She said, I don't have time. You go to that Vanik, Vaishya. He will teach you dharma. So all these stories you see. And coming to the issues related to vāda and samvāda in the Mahabharata, one of the recurring themes for debate in the Mahabharata, which occurs again and again, is the conflict between karma and action, between karma and jnana, action and knowledge. This vāda continues throughout our tradition. भारतीय जो ज्ञान परंपरा है उसमें एक खास वाद शताब्दियों से चला आ रहा है कि कर्म अधिक उचित है उसमें निर्वाह करना या ज्ञान. बाद में भक्ति और उसमें जुड़ जाती है, तो ज्ञान, भक्ति और कर्म में जो टसल है, बाद में सिंथेसिस की बात करते हैं अरविंद इंटीग्रल योग में. So these discussions continue right from the age of Mahabharata, and 35 cantos of Shantiparvan in the Mahabharata are devoted to this debate between karma and jnana. Shankaracharya also joins Trivedi Yashwant. The fray. And I have referred to this dialogue between Suvarcalā and Vetaketu. They also discuss the theory of karma and jnana. And Suvarcalā and Vetaketu discussing the theory of language, the philosophy of word and meaning, whether the words actually hint upon the reality, whether they actually incorporate reality, whether they touch reality. This question was raised by Suvarcalā. This we have discussed yesterday. This dialogue also is described in the Mahabharata, although they are Upanishadic seers, both of them. And so all these cantos in the Mahabharata, Shantiparvan, they are devoted to these dialogues. And Vetaketu we have discussed yesterday, I will omit. And this discussion goes on at long. It's a lengthy discussion after the Mahabharata war is over. And Yudhishthira is reluctant to accept the throne. Yudhishthira is a unique character, you see. He was not willing to fight the Mahabharata war, and the Mahabharata war is over, then he becomes almost like a sannyasi, and he is repenting. What crime I have committed? Because of me, all those my kith and kins are killed. So he said that I won't accept this throne. खून में सनी हुई है जो राजगद्दी है, इसको मैं नहीं अब स्वीकार कर सकता, मैं तो चला संन्यास लेकर के. तो Draupadi, as we discussed yesterday, she is a great dialogue person, a great speech she makes, and she said that he has become a mad, he has become mad, ये पागल हो गया है आदमी, and he should be put in some कारागार. She even goes to the extent of saying this. So, and all the other Pandavas, 4 brothers, they argue with Yudhishthira that you are wrong by refusing the Raj Dharma in lieu of Sannyasa Dharma. You are not doing your duty. Then they go to Bhishma, then Bhishma is, and Vyasa, they go to Vyasa first, then go to Bhishma, and both of them start their discourses on Raj Dharma and Sannyasa Dharma, and there are lengthy discourses on this dichotomy between Raj Dharma and Sannyasa Dharma, and what a king is supposed to do. How can he make a samanvay? How can he synthesize both of them? So this theme occurs again and again in the Mahabharata. Then with a view to help Yudhishthira to come out of his dejection and exasperation, Yudhishthira is utterly dejected. He is exasperated. He is aghast actually. बहुत ही सदमा उनको लगता है. सोचा नहीं था कि ऐसा भयंकर दृश्य होगा. That is why Mahabharata is supposed to be an epic of Shanta Rasa, because it is ultimately a search for peace. It is not for war, you see. It is a text against war. The war happened, so what to do? War has to be described. But Mahabharata is not telling the tale of war with a view to describe war. The great war, Mahayuddha, it is described as an appeal to the people not to have wars again. So this utter dejection and exasperation of Yudhishthira, and he is not accepting his social and moral responsibility as a Kshatriya. And to persuade him to be the ruler of Hastinapura, Bhishma narrates this itihasa. Again he said that I will tell you an itihasa. Itihasam puratanam akhyāsyāmi. Whatever he says. And this dialogue between Sulabhā and Janaka. It's a wonderful dialogue, you see. It is one of the greatest texts in philosophy. Nothing can equal, perhaps, this dialogue between Sulabhā and it's a text in psychology, human psychology, and all the tussles between different theories and the inner dialogues also. It's a great text, Sulabhā Janak Samvāda. And many of our scholar philosophers have tried to unravel the mystery of this Sulabhā Janak Samvāda. It's a profound dialogue between the two. So it's a milestone in the history of ideas and a record of one of the greatest debates involving philosophical, social, and moral issues. Bhishma suggests that one can pursue the path of moksha dharma as an individual in his personal life, and along with that, he or she can continue with his or her social, moral, and religious obligations. That there is nothing wrong in simultaneously performing both the duties, social responsibility of Raj Dharma and Sannyasa Dharma in a detached manner. By adopting Nishkama Karma Yoga, which Gita defines that way. And in this way, continuing his discussion, he refers to an ancient king Janaka, That Janaka is the example who could perform both the dharmas, Raj Dharma and Moksha Dharma. So Janaka is a liberated soul. He had realized the ultimate truth and he could follow the Gyan Marga, the path of true knowledge in his personal life. So his personal life is there and his social life, fulfilling the moral obligations as an administrator or king, that also goes parallel to it. So he is performing, he is doing justice to both karma and jnana. Then what is the problem actually? That even as great a person, as great a philosopher, king as Janaka, he can become overconfident, and he might be fostering an ego of his spiritual attainments, that I have attained this emancipation. So the story goes there that once he was sitting in his royal court and a yogini named Sulabhā arbitrarily entered the courtroom. Nobody could know how she has entered, crossing all the barriers. Dwarpalas are there, several kakshas are there, but she entered. She was standing in front of Janaka, encountering him, and she was eyeing him. And then she entered inside Janaka through his eyes. This is what Mahābhārata says. Then Janaka became very much disturbed, and he questioned that lady, how comes that you have intercepted? How comes that you have reached here and you entered in my body by your yogic powers or whatever? So then there is a dialogue between the two. Sulabhā says that I have come to tell you that you are not a real emancipated person. आप सच्चे ज्ञानी नहीं हैं, because there is a dichotomy between your karma marga and jnana marga, and you are not a completely elevated person. This is what he. So the difficulties of resolving the confrontation between these two paths become very apparent when Janaka is confronted by this yogini, Sulabhā, who was a mendicant, ascetic, or wandering nun, you can say, and she was a great logician also. She argues, she shows him that there is a dichotomy. आपके मानस में कुछ द्वैध है. So full Advaita you have not reached. This is the problem actually. So she enters. I will omit these things, and Janaka is unhappy at this encroachment or interference. This is unwanted entry of this lady, and then the dialogue between the two souls, both of whom are said to be emancipated, there takes place. And Janaka questions her, what authority you had to enter like this? And he explains his position. He understood that she is challenging him. So he says, I am liberated by knowledge, and then crown profession of Kshatriya king, I am a king, and I am adept in philosophical systems. अपनी सारी विद्वत्ता भी वो बघारते हैं. He shows himself, he presents himself as a scholar, because earlier in the other parvans of the other chapters of Mahabharata, there are discussions, there are great vadas described in the court of Janaka. They are happening. The great Panchashik Acharya, who was earlier than the Ishwar Krishna, Sankhya Acharya, so he explains his theory in the court of Janaka. And Vaisheshika theory is also described, happening in the samvadas there, described as a samvāda there in the court of Janaka. So on the basis of that, whatever knowledge Janaka had acquired with great seers like Yagyavalkya, Panchashik, and others, he claims that he is a jnani. He is adept in Vaisheshika and Sankhya yoga system, and I have obtained complete knowledge. I do not have any more doubt about nature of moksha dharma, he says. And I am able to practice worldly affairs in my personal life by systematically following the path of detachment. So निष्काम कर्म मैं करता हूँ, वैराग्य के द्वारा अपनी ड्यूटीज भी मैं करता हूँ. That is what he is saying. So I am living as a परिव्राजका. in this kingdom of mine, and simultaneously working as a ruler by governing and performing my social responsibilities selflessly. Nishreyas. This term, this Nishreyasa term occurs in Nyaya Sutra and Vaisheshika also. And so I have obtained Nishreyasa as per Vaisheshika system, and I have acquired Kevalya Jnana as per the Sankhya system, he says. Okay, so I am practicing the knowledge acquired through discussions on the Vaisheshika and Sankhya yoga systems, and I have accordingly reformed my life. So, and all these, okay. Again, he makes some allegations in somewhat indecent language. You see, you are so beautiful, you are young, why have you gone for the sannyasa? Why have you become a sannyasini? You should have married better, so beautiful you are, and you want to seduce me, entangle me by love. Sneha bandhan pash, this is the word occurs there, and break me from my woe of seclusion. And emancipation which I have obtained. So now the whole duality of the character of Janaka becomes apparent. He is so disturbed just by an appearance of the lady, because she was a lady of different sort. She was not an ordinary lady. She was a great yogini and a philosopher and a thinker and a logician also. And that Sulabhā remains undisturbed. Janaka is aggressive, makes allegations in a licentious tone also. And Sulabhā hears him and gives a very calm and patient reply. And she provides an insightful rejoinder to his outburst. She questions the integrity of Janaka. If he is truly emancipated, as he claims, then there should not have been difference between outward physical body and the consciousness of inner soul known as Atman, which according to Sankhya is ultimately realized as pure consciousness alone. So you have not realized that pure consciousness, because there is a duality within you, and you are performing the duty of a king in a detached manner as you claim, and you also in your personal and private aspect life, your claim of renunciation concurrently, but this does not hold good consistently. It is partial or half-hazard mode of understanding moksha. So this is a rough translation of what Sulabhā is saying. It is possible to understand meaning of moksha as complete freedom from material aspects of existence, and yet at the same time remain absolutely purely conscious. This is the question. Is it possible to understand the meaning of moksha as complete freedom from material aspects of existence, and yet at the same time to remain absolutely and purely conscious of the sthula sharira or sukshma sharira in this world? So her point is that you are conscious of your sthula sharira and your sukshma sharira also, and still you claim that you are keval jnani. You have reached the state of kevalya. So your claim is not justified. So she says that when I entered your body through my powers, you were at least partially aware or conscious of my entry, which you also don't deny. This means that you are still aware and conscious of your material body, and my consciousness entered into your body or consciousness also. So I have not entered into your body physically, but only through eyes, as I have not entered into your body physically, but only through eyes by consciousness. My consciousness has entered. If Janaka, you are truly emancipated totally, then how can you still be aware of your material body and various kinds of differentiations and discriminations that you have made to justify your claims? This is the question. And then Janaka says something, you see, it is not a perfect reply. And Sulabhā then disappears. She says, okay, I'm not satisfied, I'm going away. I will go to a smashana now to perform my sadhana. But consider what I am saying. So this is the dialogue. It's just only the summary I have given. And these objections, you see, the whole tradition, you see, raises this question. The whole tradition of our knowledge system, our philosophical system, it raises this question, this dichotomy between karma and jnana, and whether the claim about Janaka that he was really the perfect sannyasin is justified, or he has reached the state of Advaita, whether it is justified to say that. So in 12th century, Jayaratha raises this question, and in 20th century, Gopinath Kaviraj also. So this is the area of Shaiva philosophy. Sarvesh Tripathi is here. He is a very good young scholar of Shaiva philosophy, one of the most promising young scholars in the Sanskrit world. And he has sent very good comments with regards to the contribution of Shaiva system to the tradition of Vāda. I fully agree with him. Shaivism still remains rather neglected. Only great philosophers like Gopinath Kaviraj drew our attention to it, or some scholars like K.C. Pandey and Subramaniam Iyer, and nowadays some young persons. So they are studying Shaiva philosophy, which is now becoming very, very relevant. So now Jayaratha finds the concept of liberation in Sankhya and Vedanta incomplete. And Kaviraj too also, he finds lacuna in this philosophical system. He opines that even the unity of Jiva and Brahman as propounded in Shankaraj monism is somewhat behind the concept of Purna Advaita Vāda. He builds up his own theory of Purna Advaita or Purna Advaita Vāda, which he is proposing, because it does not indicate the duality in toto. Satyapi bhedapagame nath tavaham na mama kinastam. Shankaracharya himself says that I am yours, but you are not mine, because you are vast than me. I am just a drop in the ocean of infinity that you are. So I can become you, but you have not become me. Then there are some bhaktas in Bhagavata. Prahlad says that you have become me and myself have become you. And a very peculiar language, Abhinav Gupta and Prahlada, they use for this wonderful language, because they are experiencing the complete unity of being the experience of being one with the infinity. So the claim about Janaka or the Advaita Vedantins, how far is it justified? This question is raised by the Shaiva philosophers and even Gopinath Kaviraj, and this question was raised by Sulabhā Yogini in the Mahābhārata. Then there are scholars. Unfortunately, we are running short of time, and Mahābhārata is a great text on the theory of Vāda and samvāda also. I will come to it briefly. Within 10-15 minutes, I have to finish. So there was professor of philosophy, Professor Mangala Chinchore or Dr. Mangala Chinchore in the Pune University. She has written a very good paper on this Sulabhā Janak Samvāda. She presented it in some conference and sent me the copy for my opinion. And there is one all of you might be knowing, Arindam Chakravarti, a very good philosopher, scholar amongst us. He has also made a study, very insightful, profound study of the Sulabhā Janak Samvāda. And then there was a series of sessions on Mahābhārata organized by some group of philosophers in Delhi University Philosophy Department people, and they invited me for a lecture on the Mahābhārata. So when I refer to the Sulabhā Janak Samvāda in my lecture, it was on Dharma in Mahābhārata. So they informed me that they had a full session of discussions on the Sulabhā Janak Samvāda. So this Samvāda is attracting the attention of modern philosophers, being a great text in philosophy. So Sulabhā, this Mangala Chinchore interprets in a bit different way. With her, I do not completely agree. And she says that there is a resolution of the conflict between Jnana and Karma in this story or narrative by pointing out the path of yoga. Sulabhā is a yogini. So Samya Yoga, she hits upon the Samya Yoga. So you are talking of Sankhya and you are talking of Vaisheshika, but you have to go to Samya Yoga. Vinoba also talks of Samya Yoga. Incidentally, Vinoba says the same thing, that all the great philosophers, they have not attained the Purna Advaita, because they are talking of in the terms of individual. I have attained Nirvana. They are not talking in the terms of we. So they should have said we the people of India. So they have not become one with the infinite. So they cannot see the reality percolating in the people. So Vinoba is a different kind of person. Elsewhere, I have been delivering lectures on dialogic traditions. There I take Gandhi and Vinoba, great dialogue persons. So these questions are raised again and again in the whole system. But this is Mangala Chinchora's interpretation, that Sulabhā hints upon the Samya Yoga and she tears away the mask of hypocrisy. पाखंड का जो मुखौटा जनक ने लगा रखा है उसको वो तहस नहस कर देती है सुलभा योगिनी इत्यादि भी वो कुछ फीमेल डिस्कोर्स स्त्री विमर्श के अंतर्गत कहती हैं. तो बट अरिंदम चक्रवर्ती gives another view of this whole dialogue and it is worth considering. So Sulabhā had stopped the process of ceaseless endeavor of a human being to be harmony with the fullness of life. This is what Arindam said. Did Sulabhā have an authority to enter the body? We will leave this. And Arindam Chakravarti said the indecisiveness of Mahabhārata as to who is the winner, Janaka or Sulabhā, narratively draws us nearer to the cognitive discursive caution of never claiming dogmatically to have got it right. This is very important because Bhishma doesn't say that Sulabhā the yogini winner was the winner in the debate or Janaka was the winner. He stops there, that Sulabhā left saying that I am leaving and she disappears and the whole episode is over. Bhishma doesn't say. And he said that here is the example, you see, Janaka who claims to be synthesizing Raj Yoga and Karma Yoga, Sannyas Yoga both. So, this debate will continue and you can't say that I got it right or I am the, like the debate of Rangoji Bhatt and Vidyadhish which Professor Madhav Deshpande was discussing yesterday. So both are claiming that I got it right, I am the winner, I have conquered. So none of them can claim actually, neither Janaka nor Sulabhā. That is the reality and this debate had to continue. यही सच्चाई है संवाद परंपरा की कि ये वाद तो चलता रहेगा and there will be new facets, new points added to in it, like Gopinath Kaviraj ji adding his own philosophy there. So with this we stop this discussion and there is another point about Mahabharata, very important point, that Mahabharata is a great text in Nyaya philosophy also. It should be studied as a discourse in Nyaya philosophy because so many categories of Nyaya philosophy are here. It is discussed like the Sankhya philosophy, and Sankhya philosophy is very important in the Mahabharata because it is pre-Karika Sankhya. It is the Sankhya system which is older than the system of Ishwar Krishna Sankhya Karika. So in the same way, the Nyaya system which Mahabharata is discussing is equally important, you see, and the categories of Vāda which Mahabharata is mentioning, particularly in the Sulabhā Janak samvāda, it is also important from the point of view of the categories of Vāda, because Sulabhā then, when she challenges Janaka, she also says that this is not the way to enter into debate with a philosopher. I will tell you how to make debates and dialogues with a philosopher. And then she enumerates the categories of Vāda and samvāda. This is very important. So otherwise, Mahabharata discusses so many categories of Tarkashastra. This word Tarkashastra occurs here in this stanza, Tarkashastra Krita Buddhi, etc. The word Tarka occurs repeatedly. Many categories of Nyaya, like Panchavaya Vakya, we will be just discussing in the next lecture. The 5-member syllogism, this is described in the Mahabharata. Pramanas are discussed, Pratyaksha, Anuman, Opamya and Shabda. All the 4 pramanas are discussed, which are the pramanas in the epistemology of Nyaya philosophy. And Anvikshiki philosophy actually is described. Nyaya-shastra, the word Nyaya-shastra also occurs there, but it is Anvikshiki darshan, which is the old darshan, old philosophy. So this Panchavaya Vakya had already come in the Anvikshiki system, as Mahabharata informed, and the whole theory of inference or Anumana, that was there, perhaps before Gautama, the Nyaya-sutrakara. So there are other categorizations which we are just going to discuss in Nyaya philosophy, like Jalpa, Vitanda, Nirnaya, Nyaya, Anuman, etc. They are described in the Mahabharata, and Panchashikha I have referred. Then Sabha is described in the Mahabharata, what sort of discourses should be delivered in the Sabha. The whole concept of Sabha is there. Nasa Sabha yat pranasanti vradha vradhas nate yena vadanti dharmam naso dharmo yat pranasatyam asti satyam natad yat chale nanu viddham. Very beautiful stanza, repeatedly cited. Even in Narada Smriti it is cited. The definition of a Sabha and how the dharma vradhas are there, how they have to speak about the truth. So this concept about the vāda is there, and Mahabharata reflects dilemmas or perennial questions of destiny, life and death, to set the ground for debates on crucial issues of human life, etc. Then, oh, I'm sorry, I'm running very much short of time. So we will go to this debate which Draupadi has raised. It's a well-known debate, you see. In the Kaurav Sabha, when she was dragged and was being molested by Dushasana, she first asked the Pratikamin, the Chokidar or Pratiharin who went to call upon her to come to royal court. Duryodhana has called you, asked you to appear. So she didn't send any message for Duryodhana, but said that go and ask that Dyutaparvan, that is my husband. She didn't say my husband. She said, go and ask that Dyutaparvan, that person who is addict to Dyuta, whether she struck himself first or he struck me first. Go and ask him. So that Pratikamin, you see, she returned and told the court that Draupadi has asked this question. This question was to Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira did not reply. Duryodhana was very much angry, and he sent Dushasana, go and drag her into the court. Dushasana, grabbing her head and hands, he dragged her into the court, and Draupadi was brought. There Draupadi raised a question before the elders, that I ask you one question. You are the most knowledgeable persons, Bhishma, who is the greatest intellectual in the Mahabharata, greatest of the Jnanins, and Drona. So I ask you this question, whether legally it was valid for Yudhishthira to put me on stake. क्या युधिष्ठिर को मुझे जुए में दांव पर लगाने का अधिकार था, जबकि वो खुद अपने आप को हार चुके थे दांव में? This is a legal question, and then a legal debate is there, one of the greatest legal debates in the history of human civilization, perhaps, whether Yudhishthira is authorized to put on stake his wife when he has already lost himself in the game. He has become a slave. A slave doesn't have a property right. A slave doesn't have property rights. This is the position of Dharmashastra. A husband may have right to put his wife on stake in dice, in the game of dice. During those days, he might be having right. आज की दृष्टि से तो हम सवाल कर सकते हैं कि पति को क्या अधिकार है कि पत्नी को जुए में दांव पर लगा दे. But during those days, say, a husband is authorized to stake his wife in the game of dice. This Draupadi knew, but she raises a valid question. When a person has lost himself in the game of dice and he has become a slave, slave doesn't have property rights. So wife is not a property. Wife is no more a property to him. So he doesn't have the right. and nobody can reply. Bhishma is perplexed. बहुत खराब दयनीय हालत उनकी हो गई. He was perspiring. This is what Bhima appears, the greatest of the Jnani, you see. To me, Bhishma is not a great character. कोई अनुकरणीय चरित्र नहीं है भीष्म का. भगवान करे कि भीष्म जैसा कोई पैदा ना हो. सारी गलतियां उन्होंने की है जिससे कि सारा सत्यानाश महाभारत में हुआ है. मैं तो बहुत खराब बोलता रहा हूँ भीष्म पितामह के बारे में, और बुरा लोगों को लगता है तो लगता रहे. क्या हालत उनकी हो गई है. व्हाट इज द स्टेट ऑफ हिम. ही कांट, ही हैज नो वर्ड्स, यू सी, ही इज फाल्टरिंग. कि बेटी मैं कुछ कह नहीं पा रहा हूँ, क्या पता नहीं. युधिष्ठिर तो खुद ही धर्मराज हैं, उन्होंने तुझे दाव पर लगा दिया तो वो तो धर्म जानते हैं. और ये तो तूने ठीक ही कहा कि वो दास के अधिकार नहीं होते हैं, तो अधिकार उनको नहीं था. लेकिन वो दास होते हुए भी तेरा पति तो था ही, तो पति को तो अधिकार है. सो ऑल दिस in a confused way is mixing up the whole things, and none else is replying to the question of Draupadi amongst the elders. Then Vidura and Vikarna, they stand for Draupadi. You see, this is a great debate, because Draupadi creates a consensus in her favor by raising the debate. That is what the debates and dialogues do for the society. If you raise your voice, you raise a question, and there is some person who will be aroused at least. If the great intellectuals are silent, then there will be some common people who would rise. So Vidura is being rebuked by Duryodhana when he is rising to stand in favor of Draupadi. Duryodhana even says that you are a Shudra, you are a Dasi Putra, you don't speak. And Vikarna also, he silences, but both of them continue to speak, and they deliver very wonderful speeches. They are wonderful dialogues. Why Draupadi justified? Vidura says, and Vikarna also says that how Draupadi justified. Logically, she is justified. So we can construct the whole Panchavya Vakya, whatever Draupadi says out of that, and whatever Vidura and Vikarna say out of that. It's a great text in Vāda that way. I will not go into the details, you see. Say Pratigya Hetu, Upnay, Nigman, and Drashtant. Pratigya Hetu, Drashtant, Upnay, and Nigman. These are the 5 categories under the logistics of Nyaya system. So what Draupadi is saying, you can say, Draupadi जुए में हारी हुई संपत्ति नहीं हो सकती है. That she is not lost as a property in the game of dice. So Duryodhana doesn't have any right over her. He doesn't have a right to enslave her. Because so many reasons you can give. Because it was not legal for Yudhishthir to play the game of dice. It is prohibited game, one thing, and he was not playing on his own will. He was late to play, you see. This is what Draupadi is saying, that my husband was declining. Yudhishthira actually delivers a discourse on the evils of dice before the game of dice starts in that Dyutaparvan. He said that I am not willing to play because all the Dharmashastras say that Dyuta is Nishiddha karma. So I will not play. But still they provoke him. And for Kshatriya, it is the dharma that somebody is challenging you. Whether it is Dyuta Yuddha or whether it is another Yuddha, you should join. Actually, he was addicted to dice, game of dice also. So he was not in his senses. Draupadi, that is what Draupadi says, that he was not in his senses when he did all this. So his actions are not valid. This is another argument. And then very valid argument is that he has lost himself and he's become a slave. He doesn't have any right to put another property on stake. Then this Pratigya and Hetu is there. In Drashtant you can say, very good Drashtanta I give when I talk of this, that Dala, a great king, he was also a great king. He was possessed by Kali and he is playing dice. And that brother of him, he is provoking him again and again to put all his belongings on stake. And only Damayanti is there. And he asked him, you put your wife, Damayanti, also on stake. Then Nala throws away all the dice, those pashas of dice. And he said, no. So he was a lover. He knew to love Draupadi. So he could rise and decline. Yudhishthir is not a lover, you see. He's a great Dharmashastrin and great Jnanin. So he couldn't do that. he put Draupadi on the stake. So this is the Drishtanta that even Nala declined to stake his wife in the game of Dyuta. And then Upnaya Nigman, you can say, in this way it is not proper. It was not proper or valid or legal for Yudhishthira to put Draupadi on stakes. Then we will come to some of the categories within 2-3 minutes. I will try to finish. In the Sulabhā Janak Samvāda, which I have discussed, Sulabhā enumerates 18 blemishes of speech. So this is the theory of vāda and samvāda both. A man should avoid these 18 blemishes. In later theory, some of them become nigrasthanas, of which Rajaram Shuklaji was talking yesterday, and I will also come to that. And it is simple theory, but very scientific and perfect, without going into the intricacies of the Nyaya system. She says that these 18 blemishes one should avoid, then one can enter into proper dialogue. And of these, 9 belong to the structure of stylistics. You can say Vakya doshas, Shabda doshas, Artha doshas, and 9 belong to the semantics, intent of the speaker or interlocutor. So these are the flaws of expression. Gurvartha Sanyuktam, that is verboseness, Parangmukha Sukham, Trivarga Viruddham, flouting the human ends, Asamskritam, uncultured. In Kā-vetaketu, it becomes a Chut Samskriti, or some of them become Chut Samskriti actually. Vyakaran Viruddha is Chut. Vyakaran Viruddha is Chut Samskriti there in Kā-vetaketu. And Nyunam is also a dosh in literary theory, and Nyunam is a dosh there in the Nigrasthanas, etc. And Kashtam is also strand phrases, and Vikramabhi Hatam, full of words reflecting arrogance. And Shesham is incomplete. This also in Nyaya theory, in Nigrasthanas it occurs. And Nishkaranam is unreasonable, etc. So these 9 are the flaws of expression, and 9 are the flaws of intent. And she says that I am not talking out of Kam, Krodh, Bhay, Lobh, Dainya, and Anaryaka, and Ri, and Anukrosh, and Man. So if I talk out of these 9 flaws will arise, she says, 9 flaws of intent. And she elaborates upon them. It's a lengthy discussion, you see. The whole stanzas are there, philosophical or stanzas describing the theory. And these are the virtues which will arise if you avoid these 18 blemishes. Anapetarth, Avinnarth, Nyayarth, Anyunadhikya, and Shlakshanata, and Asandhigdhata, wholeness, coherence, judiciousness, conciseness, grace, and being free from doubt, etc., etc. So I will now avoid all the other details of this. You can go through the original text also. You see what Sulabhā is saying. The original text I have here. It's a good exposition of the whole theory of vāda and samvāda, and the impediments, blemishes, and qualities of vāda and samvāda.